Figure it out.
Hello, this is Adam Koralik from Figured Out Productions. The following video is a video of some kind, and I hope you enjoy it.
Hey guys, it's Adam here, and I wanted to do another follow-up to discuss the PlayStation 5. So yesterday, at the time I record this, Sony did their big PS5 reveal. They showed the console, they talked a whole lot about it, a bunch of games. I did a follow-up video to that was just kind of my initial thoughts and reactions to everything. And I don't usually do stuff like this, but I took in a lot of the feedback that I got in the comments, people who were pointing out a lot of things, and I wanted to address a lot of that in a video today and just kind of go on to take more time to discuss certain things, because obviously we've had now basically a day to kind of sit on it and just think about it. So the first thing up is people do not seem to like the design of the PlayStation 5. Like, I have seen, I mean, yes, there's jokes. I made jokes about how it looks like a router. Like, that's the first thing I thought when I saw it. But do I hate the design? No, but a lot of people really seem to. Like, I think I've seen like only a handful of people say anything positive about it on any of the outlets in which I was talking about it, which would include not only YouTube, but like Twitter and Facebook and all that sort of stuff. Like, I saw just a couple people being like, I don't know, I kind of like it. I don't think I saw even like diehard, like what you would call Sony ponies. I didn't even see them show up to talk about how much they like the design. But to be fair, I think that this is just what happens every time a new console is announced. Like when the Xbox One X was announced and everybody saw that, everybody was making fun of it, everybody hated it. But people don't really talk about that anymore. I think it's just kind of one of those things where you just start to accept it. I think that in everybody's mind there is this idea of what a console is going to look like, and it can't live up to that because they can't possibly design something unique to just you. It's kind of impossible. And I'm sure people will argue like, yeah, but they could have made it not look like that. And that's, I guess, true. But at the same time, it's definitely relatively unique for a console. I haven't seen it in person yet, just the photos like the rest of you, so I don't know. I don't dislike it. I can't say I love it. I'm sure it'll grow on me. That'll largely come down to size, which we'll get back to later. But, I think it'll most likely be fine. However, I agree with there's a lot of people are saying that they wish if the console was black, that they'd probably be vastly more on board. And I saw a lot of fan mock-ups of taking it and making it black in Photoshop or whatever. And honestly, it does look a lot better. And I kind of thought the same thing. I was like, if it was black, I think I'd be much more on board with it. The fact that it's white, it kind of just looks like almost like an Apple product as opposed to like a Sony product. Or it kind of looks like that Astrobot thing, which a lot of people were like, yeah, that was a PSVR game. It's like, oh, I guess so. I don't use PSVR, so no idea. A lot of people are also bringing up, like, can you lay it flat? Because it looked based on the design that you may not be able to. Sony later on throughout the day showed off some designs of it, being on its side. So yes, you can lay the console flat if you want, which is good. At the moment, when I look over at my setup, which is what I'm kind of like looking over there, I don't entirely know where it would go just yet. That'll also, once again, come down to the size of the console, but I think I would probably put it vertical just because of the way my particular shelving unit is set up, but, we'll see. Assuming I get one right away, which is the big question, I probably will, just because I do run this channel and it's, something that I think is expected, but at the same time, that'll boil down to price and how much. I mean, dude, I'm a YouTuber and I'm not a particularly big one, so like it's not, I don't know how much funding will be available for that. We will see. Now, a bunch of people were quick to point out in my previous video that I had made a mistake about the estimated size of the hard drives, or the SSDs. I was talking about how I thought maybe there would be a 1 terabyte and a 2 terabyte model. Everybody was like, they already confirmed this is an 825 gigabyte SSD. Now, my initial reaction to that was, oh yeah, that's right, I forgot that. But it was also, that's a really strange number. I mean, is that not just like a 1 terabyte SSD with 825 gigabytes usable? And the reaction to that has been, if that was the case, they would have marketed it as a 1 terabyte, SSD, and then, not tell you how much of it was usable, because that's always how things like hard drives work. Why would they tell you 825 when it's actually probably less usable than that? And that's a good point, but I believe that information was also revealed by Mark Cerny, who is more of an engineer, who's probably going to give you more accurate engineering and operational numbers as opposed to marketing numbers. So I don't know as the same as any of us, But let's, for argument's sake, okay, fine. Both versions of the PS5 will presumably have an 825 gigabyte SSD, which again is a strange number. I presume you can upgrade that, because to Sony's credit, they've been very good about allowing consoles, particularly the PlayStation 3 and the PlayStation 4, to upgrade the hard drive inside to any size of your choice. I guess technically you could do that with the PS2, though, unless you're doing it for very specific reasons. You don't really need to do that. But so I assume they'll continue on that tradition, and they definitely get a point for that, because Microsoft's always been terrible about allowing you to upgrade the hard drive. Microsoft with the 360, yeah, sure, you could put on an external storage device, but you had to put on a pre-approved one, as opposed to Sony was like, LOL, we don't care, whatever you want, just open it up, put it in the hard drive of your choice. So I hope they continue that. There's another thing that came up here, which is the disk drive. Now, I saw this image online, and I thought it was interesting, so I started posting it on social media outlets, namely YouTube, the YouTube feed, Discord, as well as Twitter. And the image was basically a comparison of the PlayStation 5 to the PlayStation 4 Pro and the Xbox One X. Now, it is important to understand this, that the image was constructed by someone in Photoshop. It is not an officially distributed image by either Microsoft or Sony. But what it is meant to represent is the potential size and dimensions of the PlayStation 5. The reason for this, if true, the image would suggest that the PlayStation 5 is actually substantially bigger, or at least taller, than the Xbox Series X, and is bigger than I think most people would have expected it to be. Now, the people are quick to point out, like, well, if somebody made that, like, what makes you think it's accurate? I mean, look at the controllers. The controllers are obviously the wrong size. I don't think the controllers are to scale. But what does actually match is the size of the disk drive. Now, the disk drive is based on the dimensions of the compact disc, something that has been universally consistent since 1982. So it's highly unlikely that that is actually wrong. But we also don't know the specific thickness of the disk drive, which of course, depending on the way they how thin or thick they made it, would obviously adjust the ratio massively. So you'd have to take the image with a grain of salt. But again, if true, it would appear the PlayStation 5 is actually a rather big console. Which was kind of going back to my point before. It's like, I don't know if I would lay it flat, because if it's that big, I don't know where I would put it. It would have to sit vertical in my current setup. So we will see. Now, the other thing that I thought of, like, the second I wrapped up my video yesterday, and I was like, oh well, is that a lot of people were bringing up backwards compatibility. Now, I think people misunderstood this. They didn't mention backwards compatibility whatsoever in yesterday's press conference. And a lot of people were like, yeah, but they already talked about it. It's like, no. I'm not saying they've never addressed it. I'm saying that in that particular conference, they never talked about it. But I thought about this some more, and I thought, you know what? The absence of the disk drive all but confirms there is no backwards compatibility, at least not with PlayStation 1, 2, and 3. Now, to be fair, I think you were kind of delusional if you still thought that PlayStation 1, 2, and 3 backwards compatibility was going to be a thing on PlayStation 5. You can get into why the PS3 in particular was very difficult. PS1 and PS2 would have been super easy. I mean, PS1 is fully backwards compatible through emulation in the PlayStation 3. Like, that's not an issue. PlayStation 2, not an issue. But without a disk drive, all of those, the argument just poof out. It's over. Like, there is no chance of that. PlayStation 4 backwards compatibility, we already know is going to be a thing, and that was one where Mark Cerny was talking about it, and he was talking about the top 100 games or whatever, and everybody misunderstood that to mean only 100 games. What he was talking about is like what they're doing at the time, whereas Sony later clarified like everything from PS4 except for like a handful of this and that, because of based on whatever random accessories they might require are compatible, so you don't really need to worry about that. So you'll get your PS4 inside your PS5, but that's it. And if you have the digital edition, I assume you'll have access to the digital games you've acquired on your account. I personally would never go down that road, but that seems to be the case. So, but I guess that makes it pretty clear at this point. There is no backwards compatibility with PS1, PS2, or PS3, and it was silly to still think so. Because let's entertain that notion for a split second here. Let's just say, sure, the disc-based edition of the PlayStation 5 has native backwards compatibility with PS1, PS2, PS3, PS4, and PS5. and it costs, even if it costs $100 more, and some people are saying it might be as low as a $50 difference. Let's say that's true. Who is picking the digital edition that would ever watch something like this? Because you're essentially being like, no, for $100 less, I am perfectly willing to cut myself off from 4 generations of PlayStation games that I could potentially get for dirt cheap that would all work. I just can't see that being the case. The only logical argument there is really that, well, PS1, PS2, and PS3 aren't included, just PS4. And if you're going to have PS4, odds are the people who are buying it digitally probably bought games digitally on PS4 to begin with. At least I think that's probably what they're banking on. So, yeah, I think the absence of the disc drive all but confirms, no legacy backwards compatibility. Now, let's talk more about that disc drive, because the thing is, a lot of people were talking about this. Now, the way Sony's PS5 looks, it would appear that the digital edition is more what they had in mind, because it's very sleek, relatively designed, whereas the disc drive edition has this like bulge on the side for the disc drive. Now, people are going so far as to call that an afterthought, which I think is a ludicrous statement, because engineers can't just, oh crap, throw a disc drive in there and just change everything. And then the entire, other side of the company is like, oh, okay, I guess we're going to have to start producing discs. I wasn't even thinking about that. Like, it's too big of an operation for it to be an afterthought. However, I do grant you that I think that they probably made the console with digital in mind, and then thought, okay, we do need a disc drive version, so what's the most cost-effective way to do that, which is we can use most of the same parts, we just kind of have to slightly redesign the case, and then just, boom, it'll work like that. Not the most attractive design, but it also does tell you, I think, where their heart is at on this. I think that they're banking more on the success of digital, and I'm sure that that's actually what they would prefer to be successful, and the same goes true of Microsoft, by the way. They would prefer digital to be successful, and there is a reason for this. It's called control. And I don't mean that in like the conspiratorial type of like, we have to put on the tinfoil hats, the government wants to get us. Not that type of control, but like economic control. Here's the thing that I want to make very clear to everyone out there who buys video games either digitally or physically. Either way you buy it, you don't own the game. You own temporary access to the license, but there is a key difference between the distribution method of the two, which is if you own the temporary access to the license to buy the game. Let's say, all right, for example, this is an older game, but let's just say I wanted to play this, and I was like, all right, I'm going to buy Assassin's Creed, Odyssey. And maybe Odyssey Remastered or something for Xbox One, Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5. Doesn't really matter, just a game. So let's say I'm going to buy that. If I bought that on Xbox One digitally, I do not automatically have the rights to own the physical disc edition for PlayStation 4. And if it was a movie, by the same token, if I bought Jurassic Park on VHS in 1993, I'm not automatically granted access to own the Blu-ray in, 2020. That's not how that works. You just have temporary access to the license. Now, with digital distribution, that control of that license is completely at the mercy of the companies who have the distribution method, aka Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo, whoever is in control of that network, Steam as well. Or in that case, I guess technically it's Valve as the corporate entity, but whatever. But with a physical edition, while the same rules are in place, you can't just, cross-share and be like, I bought it once 40 years ago, so I own the right to the newest thing. I can just steal that from a store, and that's fine. What you own also, though, is the physical plastic and material that, yield that data. So I own the actual disc, even if I don't own the rights to the disc, the movie on it. I own the permanent right to watch it as long as this particular disc never has any sort of issue. Do you understand what I'm saying? And the same would go true with video games or movies or whatever. Now, because of that, you can obviously have a third-party market for physical editions. Even though I might have bought the disc at Best Buy, whether it's, again, the movie or the game, I have the right to sell the actual piece of plastic to whoever might have any sort of sense of value for it, meaning back to a GameStop or a mom and pop store, a flea market, my friend, whatever it is, you have the right to do that. And when they acquire it, they have now acquired your rights to the license as well as the actual physical piece of plastic. The license transfers in that purchase. Once again, that's why if I sell my VHS of Jurassic Park, I did not, even if I sold it, I don't automatically now have the license to own the Blu-ray. I still have to buy that separately. Do you understand? Now, the thing is, the advantage of having a third-party market with physical editions is that that creates competition, and that creates drive for sales and bargains and the ability to get something more affordably. In essence, competition is always good for the customer. Monopolies are not, which is largely why they're considered illegal. So if your distribution method, let's say with the Xbox One, let's just take a current generation console, the Xbox One uses both digital games and it uses physical games. Whichever your preference is, you are able to buy either one. If you want digital distribution, you only have one outlet for that on the Xbox brand, which is the official Microsoft store. That's it, that's your only option, because that's the only method by which that comes out, other than, I guess, piracy, but that's not sales, nor is that legal. But when it comes to physical editions, you can buy directly from Microsoft, you can buy from Best Buy, you can buy from Walmart, you can buy from Target, you can buy third party, once again from GameStop, you can buy from your friend, you can buy from whoever. You have choices. Those choices allow those other stores to create competition within each other and in an attempt to beat out each other. Amazon, for example, might be like, okay, the game costs $60, we're willing to sell it for $40 because we just want to sell these. We want to get it out there. Then everybody goes to buy it over there, and Best Buy goes, oh, okay, fine. We'll drop it to $35. That's competition. That's how that works. You as the customer benefit from that. Now, on a digital distribution platform where there's only one distributor, they have no incentive to ever change it because they have complete control over the situation. Now, I'm sure that a lot of people would be quick to point out, yeah, but like Steam sales and Xbox sales, Nintendo just did a whole big thing with a lot of sales. Like, they do sales all the time, so you're totally wrong. Okay. One, I will grant you that there's less overhead on a digital version of a game because there's no physical plastic or requirements necessary to yield that product. That is a given. But the part of the reason that you get those type of sales is because they have to keep it competitive because they're literally competing with themselves. Microsoft's digital distribution has to also compete and keep itself relevant against the physical editions. Meaning, if every store is selling, I don't know, they keep talking about GTA 5, so let's use GTA 5. If every store is selling GTA 5, the physical edition, for $20, it makes no sense for Microsoft's digital distribution to be like, we're going to keep it at $60. They have to drop it to that at the very least, if not lower it to $10, just to incentivize you to pick their version, because that's competition. But the second all the physical stuff is wiped out, digital has no reason to ever care about you. They just don't, because that's monopolies. Now, I'm not saying they won't ever have sales, they won't ever have bargains, whatever. But trust me, when their competition is gone, they don't have any reason. They don't have any reason. It's just not how, it's just basic economics. Competition makes those types of things better for the customer. Now, but I also don't want to get it, I don't want to also have you misunderstand here. Digital is the future. Like, that's what's going to happen. And I'm not here to tell you that, like, oh, no, if we fight this, we can keep physical around forever. I personally, even though I'm 100% a physical media guy, physical media is going away. Like, that is inevitable. And I believe that this was really Sony's method by which to be prepared for that. They didn't want a repeat of what Microsoft went through with the launch of the Xbox One, which was, yeah, technically it's got a disk drive on it, but it's basically useless. Here's all this crap. They didn't want to come out there and be like, we have an all-digital console, because if they got the same kind of visceral reaction that Microsoft got, PlayStation might not have even survived that. By doing this, they've offered you both options to keep both bases happy, but you have to analyze that decision. The truth is, both of those consoles cannot survive in the same space. They just can't. They both will for a time, but math is simple. At some point, one of those will outperform the other. We simply don't know which. Now, if there is the case that the all-digital edition comes out and it just flops, like hardcore, okay, no problem. They can be like, well, the physical edition's still out there. The physical edition will still allow you to, buy games digitally if that's your preferred method. You'll have a bonus disc drive. Cool. You can have your Blu-rays if you want, and you also have access to the physical edition of games if you want. And they just go with that traditional model. That's one thing. But if the physical edition flops, you can see the reverse of that, in which hypothetically what could happen is that they go, all right, look, everybody's buying the digital console. The physical edition is not really selling all that well. There's like a contingent of nerds, like super fans that are into physical stuff. There's this one guy on YouTube with a beard. He's annoying as hell. That guy keeps pushing the physical edition. But aside from him, nobody really seems to care. Now, if that's the case, it depends on how much is hurting their bottom line, but you could easily see a situation where they go, look, we tried to appease to the physical edition guys, but digital is what clearly the people want. So here's what we're going to do. Your PS5, your physical edition PS5, you can continue to enjoy all the physical benefits of having a Blu-ray drive and the games that we've since released, but we are deciding to discontinue the physical disc editions of games, and you can still get that great PlayStation experience on your current PS5 without anything changing. All you have to do is download our games. In fact, to help you out and a thank you for being a big PlayStation customer, we've decided to give you $50 of PSN credit to go begin that experience. That is a really easy PR move to make. Would they look awful at first? Yes, absolutely. But is that impossible? Absolutely not. I mean, does people remember like when HD DVD collapsed as a format? Almost every retailer who sold HD DVD players was just handing out $50 gift cards to be like, yo, sorry. I remember I bought the Xbox 360 HD DVD player like halfway through its cycle. It was like $75. It wasn't even doing that well at that point. And after I bought it, like when Toshiba declared the end of the format, suddenly I got a $50 gift card from Best Buy being like, yo, we're sorry. And I read about that. A lot of people got that. I'm not saying that Sony would go to that extreme, but it's not impossible. And all I'm saying is I think what Sony's doing here is they're hedging their bets in either direction. Even Microsoft, who is like the biggest proponent of digital, is like, we're not doing that. We're giving you one with just a disk drive in it because it can do both. Sony's giving you options because they honestly don't know which direction they're going. But if I had to guess, I'd say they're banking more on digital. But if digital fails, at least this time around, they have an easy out, which is like, hey, we've had a disk drive the whole time. What are you talking about? It doesn't even matter. The only other case study we have for an all-digital edition of a modern console is the Xbox One S digital edition or discless edition. That was not a hit, but I've even said in the past that's also not a very good test by which to conduct that experiment, because by the point that was out, the Xbox One had already been out for like 5 or 6 years, meaning it had this entire infrastructure of games and accessories and all this stuff. It's an already pre-established console. I don't think anybody really wanted to go into an Xbox One all-digital edition to save $50 just to get far fewer access to game titles. Because at that point, you have so many games that exist that are used physically. The difference of that measly $50 would earn you is not enough to make up for all of the games you would have to buy, which you would now have to do exclusively through Microsoft's official distribution. Hopefully that makes sense to you. Now, the reason for all of this is simple convenience. Human beings have a tendency to exchange, frankly, superior things for convenient things. It's why, you know, in addition to the money, of course, it's why people go to McDonald's instead of going to fancy restaurants, because they're convenient. Convenient can mean a lot of things. It can mean it's readily available, it can mean it's fast, and it can mean it's cheap. But you know, a fancy restaurant where you sit down and you have to be there for, you know, an hour at least, and you have to go through the waiter process, and you have to wait for your food, and you have to pay a lot of money, and then you have to tip on top of that, and you have to talk to whoever you're with or whatever, is not a convenient thing. It's a completely different experience. And historically, man, people just like convenience, which is, even though I am very opposed to digital, not just because I like my physical toys, but I'm also opposed to it because of basically the anti-consumerism of it. The fact that it really violates your rights as a customer. The right of ownership is just, what is that? That goes away. And if you need any further proof of that, just study your history a little bit. When it comes to games, I mean, they're not immune. Games that go online do not just stay there indefinitely for all time. We live in a world of constant licensing issues, meaning a game can go up at one time because there is a license agreement that says it can be there for this amount of time. If that license is not renewed for any number of reasons, it gets pulled. Now, if that happens and there's a physical edition, okay, the game continues to exist and people who are super into it can acquire it any number of ways. But if it's digital, ironically, the only method available to you at that point is typically piracy. Things like Simpsons Arcade, that Scott Pilgrim versus the World game, Ninja Turtles Arcade, Ninja Turtles Reshelled, X-Men Arcade, a bunch of stuff like that just is like, hey, we put it up for a little bit and now it's gone because we didn't renew the license. You're never going to get to it. Just don't, if you're like a kid and you're like, why don't they just make licenses forever? Like, don't even talk. Like, that's not going to be a thing. That's ridiculous. It's not how the world works. Digital streaming movies and TV shows is not exactly immune from this either. I mean, just some recent examples. I mean, we've gotten examples of Disney Plus censoring content, such as things like the movie Splash, where they started removing certain imagery. HBO Max completely removed Gone with the Wind over racial insensitivity, one of the most legendary films of all time. They're like, that's not appropriate for you, and because we have complete control of our distribution, poof, it goes away. And all of a sudden the Blu-rays go up because people are like, oh, I actually owned that. So just be aware of the cold technocracy that is digital distribution. Yes, it's convenient. The things just come right to you. I get it. But you do forfeit a lot of your rights. So just be aware of what the digital version of this console means. It could be harmless. It depends on how it performs. But I'll make a very simple point. Vote with your wallet. Buy the one that's best suited to you. Just understand that what they're essentially offering you in the digital version is, hey, we're going to save you some money for convenience, but you are trading away. You're like signing one of those release forms that says, I give you my right as a customer to have complete control over the distribution of my games. Just be aware of that. And it might even work for a bit while there's still disc editions, but if you get to an all-digital generation of consoles, probably not. Now let's move on to the last point I want to make about any of this. Is the last big thing people are talking about is like, what's Nintendo's reaction going to be? People didn't really seem to care what Xbox's reaction was, because it was like, well, we already know what theirs is. We know what the Xbox Series X is. We also know it'll probably be basically the same machine. We also know it'll probably be mostly backwards compatible with a lot of stuff. We don't yet know which one will be the most capable, and people will go under the hood and really figure that out later. But we also know it's going to be cut from the same cloth, if you will. So people are asking, what's Nintendo going to do? Well, Nintendo, I don't even know why people are bringing this up. It's like, yes, technically they're competitors, but they're really off in a corner doing their own thing. I mean, if you really think about it, Nintendo has not had a home console since the Wii U. You can argue that that was their last home console. The Switch is great, but it is essentially the successor to the 3DS. It is their portable. I mean, so much so that they released a portable-only version of it. And most people play it portably anyway. Yes, you can obviously connect it to the TV, and that's how I personally ever play it. But apparently I'm in the minority, because most people play it portably. It's just kind of an afterthought, like sticking the dock, play it on the TV, and that was just an attempt to appease both bases. But obviously one went the direction they kind of were hoping for, which was the portable market, and Nintendo owns that market. There's a reason nobody even else tries anymore. And I'm kind of saying that the same thing might happen with PlayStation 5. You might be like, okay, one of those two will eventually work, and I'm betting it'll be the digital version, to be honest with you, to the point where that's where they start focusing on. But you see what I'm saying? Parallels. But going back to Nintendo, though, people are like, what are they going to do? The Switch is never going to be able to compete with it. Switch isn't trying to compete with it. Switch is trying to be a portable thing, and it's doing exactly that. It's also getting all the massive benefits of being, in the remastered, re-release era. The Switch is amazing for developers because they can be like, dude, I can just re-release games we made 10 years ago, put it on the Switch, and make a ton of money. This is the best thing ever. It's not trying to compete in the same space. Nintendo has not really tried to compete in the console market since the GameCube. Yes, obviously they had the Wii and the Wii U, but neither were like direct competitors. They were competitors, but they weren't really direct. Like, nobody was sitting there going like, what's more powerful, the Wii or the Xbox 360? Put them head to head. Like, we all knew that. The Wii wasn't trying to be that, nor was the Wii U trying to go head-to-head with the Xbox One X or anything like that. Like, it wasn't. That's just not how it was. And the same goes true with the Switch. Historically speaking, people don't like when I say this, but it's true. Nintendo has never had the most powerful hardware in a given generation, but that is not the same thing as not being competitive. Every single generation Nintendo competed in, from the NES, SNES, N64, and GameCube, they were competitive hardware. They just technically always got beat out by somebody else in that generation, even if that console wasn't successful or whatever. And people are like, but the N64, most powerful console of the time. No, you're forgetting the Apple Pippin. Like, that's where we're at. Like, we can have consoles that were more capable of it, even if they were complete flops. They did exist. My simple point there is that Nintendo that's the Nintendo that existed, that was trying to make really competitive hardware that would fight against the others. That Nintendo doesn't exist anymore. They learned that from the GameCube, which was, people don't want us for that anymore. I mean, GameCube ended up not being a flop, but it came in third out of 4, and the only other one that it lost to, unless you include the Samsung Nuon, which would be 5, unless you include that, the only one it beat out was the Dreamcast, which had been out for 2 years prior, and it was Sega. They just ran out of money and they couldn't compete anymore. It got absolutely annihilated by the PlayStation 2, and even lost out to the Xbox despite just having a gimme in Japan. So they kind of learned, like, maybe people don't want that from us. Then with the Wii, they just exploded in success, and they were like, okay, cool, I guess they really don't want that from us. Wii U, they kind of like muddled it a bit, but then they mixed it, and they're like, everybody loves our portables, let's just do a hybrid, hence Switch. So the basic question is, what is Nintendo going to do now? The answer is probably nothing. I don't think they have any real reaction or concern about any of this, like, to be honest with you, with Xbox Series X or PlayStation 5. Eventually, Nintendo will upgrade their hardware. That is an inevitability. But I do think that whatever they upgrade to will probably be on par with, like, at best, a PS4 Pro. You have to remember, the Nintendo Switch is not even as capable as an Xbox One base unit from 2013. It doesn't even have that much capability under the hood. You know, it's an upgrade over the Wii U, and that's it. That's all it is. So I think that they'll jump a little bit further. You know, they'll at least, I would guess by the time they put it out, they'll probably have like some sort of handheld equivalency of a PlayStation 4 Pro. But I also don't think that'll be for another like 3 years. So yeah, the short answer to that pointless whole thing is I don't think Nintendo really cares about this. I don't think they're reacting to it. So anyway, that'll about do it. I realized there was a lot in this video. I hope you guys found it informative or interesting at all. If you guys could please like, comment, and subscribe, I'd really appreciate that. Check out the social media stuff in the description. Appreciate that as well. Thank you very much, and I'll see you all later.